The forced entrance to the Great Pyramid of Giza. By whom and how was it first breached? Also known as alMamun's Tunnel or alMamun's Passage, or the Robber's Tunnel, the forced entrance on the Great Pyramid lies on the 6th and 7th courses of blocks, below and to the right of where the real entrance on the 17th course of the northern face of the pyramid lies. The forced entrance is used these days as the main tourist entrance to the pyramid, where after about 100 feet or 30 metres it turns to the left sharply, where it bypasses the 3 granite plugs, still in place, which originally sealed the secret entrance to the ascending passage and all the upper chambers of the pyramid, which the forced passage gives access to. The forced passage also dips down at this point, giving access to the descending passage and the subterranean chamber at its end. It is not certain that access to the upper parts of the pyramid was reached prior to the making of the forced entry. This is because there is another route into the upper parts via the so-called well shaft, which begins about 3/4 of the way down the descending passage in the right wall, climbs narrowly up to the grotto, and then exits at the right-hand side of the juncture just before the grand gallery and passage to the Queen's chamber. The upper part of the well shaft above the grotto is lined with masonry blocks, suggesting that the upper part of the well shaft, at least, leading into the grotto, a cave in the natural bedrock, was a part of the pyramid's original design. In regards to the forced passage, it is also unclear whether it was made to get into the pyramid because the original entrance was lost, or whether the tunnel was made to remove items discovered in the pyramid upper parts. The dimensions of the forced passage are much larger than the descending passage that leads to the original entrance, and the passage runs more or less horizontally directly to the juncture just beyond the 3 granite plugs. The popular story is that the Caliph alMamun in 820 AD, in his quest for knowledge during his trip to Egypt, heard of the Great Pyramid and determined to break in to find its secrets. After days unable to find the original entrance, which was covered by a block presumably indistinguishable from the others, he ordered his men to breach the pyramid at the point we now see at the forced passage. Using alternate fire and vinegar, they cracked their way through the pyramid, so the story goes, until 30 metres in they heard a thump to the left, apparently due to the vibration of their excavations. The block of stone hiding the granite plugs had come loose and fallen with a thud to the floor of the descending passage. Realising this thud indicated a possible cavity, the men tunnelled toward it, finding the granite plugs and descending and ascending passages. They then explored the upper chambers, finding them empty. This account has led some to conclude Khufu was never buried in the pyramid, and that the Great Pyramid isn't even a tomb. The story has become deeply entrenched because for so long, aside from older, rather fantastical Arab myths, it was the only realistic account. This account comes from the Kitat of al-Makrizi, 1442. Since then, however, in 1991, published by Ulrich Hamann, we have the work known as the Anwar of al-Idrisi, dated 1251, which cites 3 earlier sources. 1. Al-Wasifi, circa 1070. 2. Abu Lasalt, 1134. And 3. Ibn Mamati, 1209. All 3 agree alMamun forced his way into the pyramid and also describe the internals as evidence of it actually being explored. However, al-Wasifi and Ibn Mamati recount that alMamun only removed blockage in the existing breach. Al-Idrisi states in chapter 6 of the Anwar, quote, "On the authority of al-Wasifi and Ibn Mamati, that the Caliph's excavations forced their way through the block passage into the pyramid. End quote. And earlier in the Anwar, al-Idrisi quotes Ibn Mamati's essay on Egyptian antiquities of 1209, which goes, quote, "Among the marvellous tales of the pyramids is that when alMamun entered Egypt and saw the pyramids, then he wanted to demolish one and see what was inside. He was told this was impossible. He said, 'I must open one of them.' So excavations were carried out at great expense on the existing breach. Fires were lit and ballista were used to fire projectiles at it. It was thus discovered that the wall was nearly 20 cubits thick." End quote. There is another account of there being an existing blocked passage, which alMamun in 832 AD unblocked, which comes from Denis of Tel Mara, one of alMamun's travel companions who was with him in Egypt, apparently up until very shortly before alMamun's excavations. Denis of Tel Mara states he, quote, "examined an excavation 50 cubits deep, approximately 23 metres or 75 feet, in one of the pyramids and found that it had been built from hewn stones from 5 to 10 cubits in length, which corresponds to those of the Great Pyramid." End quote. The distance into the excavation falls short of that required to reach the internal passages. So if these accounts are to be believed, the pyramid was breached prior to 832. The pyramid, when alMamun, although a very difficult operation, simply unblocked an existing excavation. That when alMamun re-entered the upper parts for the first time in perhaps thousands of years, he discovered it devoid of any treasure, and removing the lid in the coffer in the king's chamber found only decayed remains, strongly suggests the pyramid had been plundered earlier, and likely resealed deliberately at some point. The German Egyptologist Rainer Stadelmann believed that the robbers' entrance was made when the pyramid was first plundered during the first intermediate period, 2081 to 2055 BC, and that the resealing of the pyramid, including the resealing of the king's coffer lid, as alMamun found it, was made during the Ramesside period, 1295 to 1069 BC. The blocking of the passage was done to protect the tomb from further desecration, and it was in fact this blockage some 2 millennia later that alMamun removed. If there was an existing breach in the pyramid that had been blocked after some internal restoration, why wasn't it ever noted in accounts previous to 832 AD? Was the breach at the exterior repaired during the Ramesside period to the point it was unnoticeable on the casing stone surface? Or was the breach made much later? Diodorus' account, circa 56 to 60 BC, states the pyramid in his day stood, quote, "complete and without the least decay, and yet lacked its apex stone," end quote. And 80 years later, Strabo's account, extract from the Geography of Strabo, 24 BC, where he records a hidden door in the north face that led into a narrow and low passage about 4 by 4 feet, which descended 374 feet into a deep vermin-infested pit, dug from the bedrock 150 feet below the base of the pyramid. Although absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, no mention is made of a breached entrance, nor a missing stone revealing the granite plugs, nor a breach leading from the descending passage around the plugs to the upper areas, an entrance to the well shaft, or anything about the upper parts at all. However, in Pliny's account, in his Natural History, Book 36, 20 AD, he accurately describes the well shaft, in a few features at least. Quote, "In the interior of the pyramid, the largest pyramid, there is a well 86 cubits deep, 147 feet, 45 metres, which communicates with the river, it is thought," end quote. Ending with the line, "it is thought," indicates Pliny is relaying anecdotal evidence to us. The depth of the well shaft, and that it is in the interior of the pyramid, is accurate. Whether it communicates with a river at some point is hard to say, but what this account indicates is some knowledge of the upper parts of the pyramid, perhaps. Could this knowledge somehow have trickled down through the ages, a surviving remnant, pre-Ramesside period, from those who had explored it in its entirety and knew of the pyramid's complete layout? If the Ramesside restoration is to be followed, then it is plausible that pre-24 BC and perhaps 20 AD, with the accounts of Diodorus, Strabo and Pliny, that the Ramesside restoration repaired not only the breach to the surface, but also the breach from the well shaft in the descending passage, rendering all traces to the upper parts hidden again. If this is the case, and by the time of alMamun an existing breach was visible, but the original entrance lost, between 20 AD and 832 AD perhaps, the repair in the breach had been detected, and the unblocking began, whereby the time of alMamun only 4 or 5 metres of blockage remained, which he removed, and after 800 years finally gained access again to the upper parts. Then there's the mystery of the well shaft. Why go to the trouble of concealing the entrance to the pyramid, hiding the entrance to the ascending passage with a capstone nondescript from the rest of the descending passage ceiling, not to mention the 3 granite plugs blocking access behind it, only to have a well shaft outlet further down, which leads directly up to the parts so much effort was made to hide? One explanation is that the well shaft prior to the initial plundering of the pyramid did not extend to the descending passage, but after being discovered in the junction to the Queen's chamber, it was tunnelled further. This would explain why the well shaft goes deeper than where it would meet the descending passage before cutting upwards to finally join it. So when did the plundering of the Great Pyramid take place? During the first intermediate period, as Rainer Stadelmann posits? Or given the accounts of Diodorus and Strabo, could it have been plundered after the time of Christ, perhaps during the Ptolemaic period, or some other time during the Roman-Egyptian occupation? So, in summary, Diodorus circa 56 to 60 BC reports the Great Pyramid's casing stones as being complete and without the slightest decay. Strabo, 24 BC, no mention of a breach. The same with Pliny, 20 AD, no mention of a breach. Then there is really nothing on the condition of the pyramid, apart from 250 AD, I believe. There's an account of somebody whose name escapes me, who measured the height of the pyramid. I think it's Caecilius, by using his own shadow at midday, and then the pyramid's shadow to determine its height. Then 832, alMamun unblocks existing breach and re-enters upper chamber, according to the Katit. Then we have 1070, al-Wasifi's account with blocked entrance. 1134, Abu Lasalt's account, which corresponds with the Katit account. 1209, Ibn Mamati refers to alMamun's unblocking of the original of the blocked passage. 1251, Anwar of al-Idrisi, published 1991 by Ulrich Harman, goes into the details which I mentioned. Then 1303, Crete earthquake. The casing stones were dislodged, or many of them, from the Great Pyramid, and in the ensuing century, all of the casing stones, bar some from the base, were removed to build palaces, etc. Then we have in 1442 the Kitat al-Makritzi, the popular narrative based upon this account alone. So, sometime between 20 AD and 800 AD, the Great Pyramid was breached and reblocked, or were the upper passages discovered via the well shaft earlier and the blocked breach actually never reached the inner passages? One thing is clear, that during the period between 20 AD and 832 AD, very little or perhaps nothing is known about the goings-on of the Great Pyramid. So thanks for watching, and hopefully one day some new evidence emerges on who plundered the pyramid and what it contained. Perhaps the treasures and artifacts it contained still exist somewhere. We can only hope. Okay. Bye bye.